Welcome to the first episode of Impact. I am your host, Django Degree. I'm so excited to have you here. This is our first episode, and it will be completely free. If you love what you see, I'd love to have you join us and be a part of the family. $100 will get you access forever. And we think it will be absolutely incredible what we are going to build. So, without further ado, our first episode, The Illusion of Reality. Now, look, I talk about this all the time on TikTok with friends and family. How do you know what is real? Today, I would like to start with my favorite book. Well, I don't know if I could say favorite. One of my favorite books, How Real is Real by Paul Watzlawick. This quote speaks to me in so many different dimensions. Our everyday traditional ideas of reality are delusions, which we spend substantial parts of our daily lives shoring up, even at the considerable risk of trying to force facts to fit our definition of reality instead of vice versa. And the most dangerous delusion of all is that there is only one reality. If we all actually had the ability to agree on reality, we wouldn't be arguing so much. Culturally, if you live in the West, you know that reality is not agreed upon right now. Some people believe there is one way to live life, others believe in other ways. I mean, we all have our own thoughts, our own beliefs of what reality really is. And we all are fighting for what I truly believe is a delusion. How do you know it's real? Except for the idea that you believe that it's real. We always hear that seeing is believing. But the truth is, all of us are only seeing what we already believe. We would love to tell ourselves that we are objective creatures, that somehow what we see is actually what we know to be true. But you and I know that's not true. Let's start with one of my favorite spaces. When we look at this picture, we see a lot of things that we know to be true. That's a honeybee, that's a flower, the flower's purple, the bee is yellow. We know that it is making honey by taking the nectar out. I mean, there's so many different things that we know to be true. But here's a question. We take all this time making the argument that that is a honeybee and that is a flower, that those two things are separate. But are they? How do you know that the separation between those two creatures isn't an illusion? Now, I know that consciousness and language is helpful. It's a tool. It helps us to be able to do things. For instance, if you wanted to start a beehive at your house, it would make sense to understand the difference between a bee and a flower, because then you could start your hive with bees. It's helpful to know the separation between a bee and a flower because a flower is probably not going to sting you, but the bee might. But if the flowers were to go away, the bees would go away. And if the bees were to disappear, then we know the flowers would disappear. And if we know the flowers were to disappear, then we would disappear. Is there really any separation, or is the separation an illusion? Is the language that we use a tool to help us to better communicate what it is that's helpful, but it's not real? That's the question I find myself asking myself every day. How do I know that my how do I know that my perception of reality isn't wrong and is only helpful in this moment? Perspective is the depth to which we all see reality. And I think we all remember this when we were kids. Some see a vase, some see two faces. And there's all kinds of things like this. Everybody remembers the gold dress. What color was that dress? I still don't know. But as we think about it, we all have our own perspective of reality, and we're ready to fight for it. We know that people are ready to fight for it. The Crusades, a fight over what we believe to be a holy land. Salem witch trials, trying to stop pestilence and the thought that somehow women carried it. I mean, throughout history, there are so many different times where human beings did what we now look back at as absolutely ridiculous in regards to a response of what they believe reality to be. But who's to say that your perspective is wrong? How would you know? One of my favorite artists is Escher. Alan Watts brought him up, and when I first saw his painting, it blew my mind. Because when you first look at it, you see an angel, or maybe you see a demon. But how do you know what the angels are supposed to look like? Have you ever seen angels that look like that before? Or how do you know that those are demons? Have you ever seen demons before? Are you sure that that's what they would look like? Why in your mind do words suddenly spring up that start making a point of emphasis of what you believe is in the picture? Why is it that if you maybe don't know the words demon and you only know the words angel, would you be willing to fight for the concept of what you believe is real about this painting? Escher pushes us to understand in art what we are trying to understand in life, which is that in our perspectives, in the words that we've learned, in the concepts of what these things mean, are they real? Or are we only believing it because we were taught to believe it? And that brings me to the question that I ask people all the time. Where did you learn that? Like, we think that what we believe is 100% true because we have in our head that these words are real. I'm saying things to you right now. You know that it's real. You know that I'm real. You know that the words make sense in your head. If you speak Spanish only, I mean, my words probably don't make any sense. It just sounds like gibberish. If you speak French, my words wouldn't make any sense. It's just gibberish. So how do you actually derive meaning in the words that I say? Well, someone taught you those words. Someone taught you that stringing together these sounds gives meaning. So how do you know that those words are actually your own? How do you know that those are feelings that you actually feel? How do you know that that separation that you created in the world is actually there? When was the last time that someone was able to show you something that you had never seen before? Gave you a word for it. Now you're like, oh, wow, that's so interesting. I had never noticed that. Perspective and consciousness not only helps us to see the world, but also teaches us what we believe is valuable. If you think back to the honeybee and the flower, it's valuable to know the honeybee in case you want to get honey. It's valuable to know the flower and the game that's played between the honeybee and the flower to understand how this whole process comes together for you to get the outcome that you want. But just because you understand to some extent the correlation to a process that actually makes something exist, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's 100% true. I mean, how many times have we gotten it wrong with medication? How many times have we gotten it wrong with different processes? How many things do they teach in school to this day that we know is absolutely not true, but we teach it as if it's true? I know Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. I'm also very aware of the fact that Christopher Columbus never actually made it to the Americas. But do they tell people that? Now, as I get deeper and deeper into this argument, what I oftentimes get from people is this idea of God. People start to push back on me. Django, look, I know the truth because I know God to be the truth. God is my truth. God loved me. Jesus died on the cross for my sins. And we go through this process of what they believe is the meaning that life has. And they know this to be true because it has to be true, because you can feel how true it is. But that brings me to my second question that I love to ask. What does God lack? If God is omnipotent, all powerful, all knowing, what does God lack? Now, most people at this point love to get into it. Well, God lacks nothing. God is all powerful. That's your point. You've backed yourself into a corner, Django. You don't understand the truth. You don't understand how reality actually functions. You don't understand that you're trying to put God in a box. That's not true. God lacks limits. If you believe in the God of the Bible, then God would be omnipotent, all powerful, omniscient, would know everything, would be everything, would go anywhere and do everything. Yet we have this idea that God somehow does have limits. The God of the Bible didn't want sin to be in the world, but somehow humanity made it happen. People think that they're able to break God's plan in their life because they didn't do what God wanted them to do. They think of themselves as somehow separate from God. But if God lacks all limits, how could there be separation? And also, how do we know that we even are talking about the same God when we use the word? I believe in God, but I don't know if I believe in the same God as you. When I say the word God, what were the words and the thoughts and the ideas and the view? Was it an old white dude? Was it energy? Was it a woman? I mean, everyone has these prospects and they believe that the words that they say are objectively true. But how do you remember? In fact, where did you learn that? Where did you learn what God was? Do you remember the first time that someone introduced the idea of God and began to give you the visual representation of what you now believe? Do you believe what you believe because it's easy? Is it easy because you've always heard it? It's crazy to try to conceptualize in this idea what limits actually are if God doesn't have them. Because we as human beings, and what our ego would like us to believe, is that there is a separation between us and everything else. There's this belief that somehow we are not actually the same thing as the things that we actually ingest or drop out or connect with. But how do you know that you're separate? If the honeybee can't exist without the flower, if the flower can't exist without the honeybee, if we can't exist without the flowers, because the flowers won't exist without crops, if everything ends up in a domino effect in which all of a sudden nothing exists without one piece, are you separate from that one piece? We come back to the same space. When you look at this, you see all of these separations: the honeybee, a thorax, wings, flowers, purple, seeds, nectar, all these ideas of things that exist. I think it's helpful because it's a tool. But are they really separate? Are you caught up on an idea that everything is separate because then that gives some kind of meaning to life that you needed? What if we could just accept the beauty of life? What if we could see that everything is perfectly as it was supposed to be? Because if one thing was not right where it was, then all of it would cease to exist. What if that was enough to see the perfection of life and that separated all the ideas and we didn't need to fight over anything? What's the point? We're fighting over the perception of what we believe to be true, and we're all willing to ride or die for it. There's all these ideas that we have in our head that we believe, yes, this is it. This is real. This is true. Our everyday traditional ideas of reality are delusions, which we spend substantial parts of our daily lives shoring up, even at the considerable risk of trying to force facts to fit our definition of reality instead of vice versa. And the most dangerous delusion of all is that there is only one reality. The truth is I found peace. I found peace underneath the layer of what everyone argued to me was the truth. There was this layer of perception, this idea of separation: the flowers, the bees. This is Django. He's black. He's this, he's that, he's this, he's that. And people said, well, it doesn't matter if you decide that that doesn't matter because other people will make it matter. Well, will they? Or will I just have to accept that I believe that there's a separation, that I believe that because they have stated it enough, I don't actually want to be different? How real is real? How do you know that the reality that you believe exists isn't just an illusion? I'm not telling you that you're wrong or right. I'm just asking you the things that you fight for on a day to day, the things that stress you out, the things that are difficult, the things that, you sit here and you say, hey, this made me who I am. I could never let it go. I wouldn't be here without this. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this person, if it wasn't for this idea. What if underneath all of these illusions is truth? And what if that truth could be the difference between not having peace and having peace? I hope that you love today's episode. I'm going to be putting out at least one every single week. I would love to have you be a part of our family. I think that what we're building is really incredible. And I went out of my way to try to make sure that I would do what's best for you. So if you don't know me, I spent $60,000 on personal development. 60,000. I gave it everything that I had. And in the end, I ended up kind of being alone, lost, and nobody was willing to really connect with me anymore because I didn't have any more money. As I've gone on the journey, I realized that I found peace through some really interesting, very simple processes. And I don't think that anyone should have to pay $60,000 to find out that life is much more simple than it really is. So here's what we're doing. For $100, you can be a part of this journey forever. We're going to release at least one post a week. Sometimes it's going to be 2, sometimes it's going to be 5. I am super excited to just give you as much content as I can. And I hope that by sharing my journey, my thoughts, my books, everything that I love, that it can be the difference for your life. So sign up. It's $100 one time and you will be a part of the family. We will be posting at least once a week, like I said, and I look forward to us connecting. I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for Impact. And remember, maybe it is all an illusion.